Let's be innovative. Let's challenge a norm. Let's raise the bar. Let's be the elite.
To be the best, one must beat the best. Ovals, road courses, the streets of iconic cities, race after race, the top sim racing IndyCar stars will battle it out. In sim racing, it doesn't get any better than this. This is their battleground, for the checkered flag, for the glory, for the right to say they are the best. The cars and stars of the Lionheart IndyCar Series, presented by Butt Kicker, are ready to race.
To be an IndyCar champion, a driver must be adaptable. They must be brave enough to fight side by side at 200 miles an hour on speedways, smooth enough to master short ovals, aggressive enough to conquer road courses, and daring enough to tame streets. The Lionheart IndyCar Series began with fireworks 2 weeks ago at Homestead, Miami, but it makes the trip across the US to the streets of the international city for potential chaos. Survival will be paramount, as well as mastering the strategy game that could decide the race. This is Long Beach, and this is the HyperX Grand Prix of Long Beach. Hello everyone, and welcome back to RaceSpotTV for coverage of the 2022 Lionheart IndyCar Series presented by Butt Kicker. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. And let's dive straight into our show here. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, delighted to be alongside the one, the only Justin Prince. And as we get ready for our butt kicker pre-race show and the long old slog that the drivers will have to deal with today, JP, we are on the street. It's bumpy, it's technical, it's tricky. It's a place that maybe we expect the caution to come out. It's also a place where mastering tires, like I said during my intro, is going to be crucial.
This is such a very difficult track, Arjuna, when it comes to trying to manage tires with the heat known for the state of California, but also just the difficulty of making it around a track like this cleanly and efficiently. There's so many chances for drivers here at Long Beach to end up scraping the side of their car, hitting a bit of their front wing against the tire barrier, hitting a fellow competitor in a hard braking zone. There's a lot of room and a lot of places in turn where drivers can make major mistakes. The question's going to be which drivers avoid said mistakes tonight, especially early on in the season for the first road course of the campaign.
Here's a look at our schedule. March is relatively busy. We're back to back. Next time out, a week from today, we go to Kentucky in the Speedway there. All roads then lead to Long Pond, Pennsylvania for the first of our Triple Crowns here in 2022. Let's talk though, as we've now looked at our series schedule brought to you by Next Level Racing, let's take a look at how the driver standings shake themselves up after one round. Here are your driver standings presented by Butt Kicker, and it was two rookies at the top of the pylon last time. Phil Kraus able to hold off Alexander Van der Sant. Jason Brophy continuing the good run for the private label Team Hype, rounding out the podium. But here is where it becomes interesting. Many of those names, Justin, have R for rookie next to them, but many of them were experienced with a couple of races in 2021 here in this series. They know what their competitors have to offer. They understand how to get results, and that's what we see here. Van der Sant, remember, great run in his one and only appearance in 2021. He wants to build on that here in 2022.
And I think he did that by showing what helped build his namesake when it came to Speedway Series competition at Kentucky last year, being able to save fuel and strategize. Him and Phil Kraus were amongst those really trying to make it to the end on gas, remember, when it came to the strategies to close out that respective race. But the main tough thing for a lot of the drivers now, especially for those who may have come the Speedway route, you have to go left and right when it comes to road course racing. That's going to really truly test their abilities to see if they can handle the hard braking zones of the tire strategies in turn that can come into play at a track like Long Beach tonight.
Let's take a look at our team standings presented by HyperX, and it's been a year of private label Team Hype domination here. Powerslide Adrenaline now have Adam Blocker in their ranks to close that one up, but it's never guaranteed. We'll see exactly how these are going to shake out. Factory Backs had a good run last time to build off of their solid performances, even in the Retro Series, to get things underway. Good look here at how your teams will shake themselves up, the two Synergy Motorsports teams in the mix as well. Let's very quickly, though, look at our rookie standings, again presented by Butt Kicker. Many names are familiar to us, but the likes of Caleb Bensi, who's come from the Speedway Series, Andrew Marquez, who we've seen on Monday nights in the iRacing IndyCar Open Championship, be able to tweak a setup to go fast. Decent start to his campaign here. Ultimately, though, this might be one of the strongest rookie classes, the Lionheart IndyCar Series has ever seen, JP.
And we talked about how many of the drivers who came up through the Speedway Series last year had very much promise. Were championship competitors in the Speedway Series, and immediately when some of them made starts in the end of 2021 in IndyCar competition, were competitors battling for race wins, especially Phil Kraus from the get-go. Robert Mleczka III also comes to mind on the ovals. I'm expecting those drivers to be contenders for races such as tonight's Arjuna, because Kraus, Van der Sant, amongst those who showed good chops when it comes to driving their way around the road courses. For some of the others, I think it's going to be an adjustment period. Alexis Newsom had some rough moments in 2021 in her part-time starts before her full-time rookie campaign. A few others looking to show that they can also drive well in a road course.
Alexis Newsom has recently joined up with the IndyCar powerhouses Team i5G. Now, not necessarily known for her road course pace, but already showing that the ovals will be her playing ground. Let's talk through your series details presented by Gomez Sim Industry. It is the 10th season of this Lionheart IndyCar series in the 9th year of Lionheart Racing Series competition. We're in the newest American open wheel machine, the Dallara IR18, with a custom fixed setup and in-car tools. That's going to be important. No weight jacker, that's only on the ovals, but you do have the front, the rear ARBs, JP, which will help tighten and loosen up the car. And we've already heard from the drivers, they're struggling with this setup, especially the longer that we go through these fuel stints. Understanding what changes to make and progressing through them in a proactive manner is going to be the best way to find speed throughout the course of this race.
It's going to be very critical for the drivers to make sure they're comfortable with this setup in turn, because as you said, you can't really adjust too much outside of those ARBs. That's going to be something we'll be seeing drivers really adjust, because for some of them, we were talking about the bumps in particular are going to be something drivers are going to have to really fight against tonight when it comes to racing on a street, because, well, streets can get bumpy, especially when it comes to high usage intersections. So this is going to be the type of night where those adjustments can come into play, but also the tire compounds, because for the first time this season, we'll see the different tire compounds come out to play for road course racing. And when we came to Long Beach last year, when it came to those strategies, we've seen either 2 reds and a black used, or 2 blacks and a red in terms of the tire sidewall color compounds used.
Let's get into that in a couple of moments. Now let's remind you, $10,600 in cash and prizes on the line. Your series champion will receive a Next Level Racing GT track cockpit, as well as a Gomez Sim Industry Formula FPE rim. That is an exciting prize, of course. The Triple Crown Pocono Indy Auto Club. Auto Club will round out the season. Our defending champion lost his streak of top 5s last time out. That was a streak that ran for more than 15 months. What's he going to do to respond? He's already been blistering quick in practice. And of course, in the team championship, they're all hunting down the private label Team Hype. Here are your event details brought to us by Moser Racing. It's the 3rd trip to the international city in this Lionheart IndyCar series. We came here 12 months ago, but it was a long time before that we went racing. It was back in season 1, and this track existed in Point Cloud City, as I like to call it. It was in this limbo of a state where the track surface was done, but the trackside details were not done. Now it's fully fledged, it's a beautiful thing to look at, and it really is now going to be a staple of this series for years to come. JP mentioned it, you're required to use both compounds. The black primary tire, which is slightly harder, will last a bit longer, but is a little bit slower. The red alternate tire, a little bit quicker, a little bit softer, wears faster, and the balance there is a little bit more difficult. Season 1, we can't really talk too much about that because of how many changes the track and the car have had since then. But last year, Sage Karam led all but 4 laps on his way to HyperX victory lane. The margin was 15.5 seconds, give about there. It says 4 lead changes, JP, but the reality is all of those changes happened in the pit cycle. When we talked to Adam Blocker after the race 12 months ago, what did he say? He could do nothing. He could do nothing to try and reel on in Sage Karam.
Sage Karam, just when it came to his competition speed that year, and for the previous year, mind you, when it came to road courses, was untouchable. And that's to be expected when you have a driver like Sage Karam with real-world experience when it comes to the Lionheart IR18 chassis, as well as somebody who since then as well made stock car starts on road courses. You should expect Sage Karam to be very quick in the virtual world.
Absolutely. Let's talk more about this track. It's flat relatively, but plenty of bumps. Not as bumpy, though, as Belle Isle, which is another street course that we visited here in Lionheart competition before. Gives you a different taste, a different sort of a flavor to your street racing preferences, but this is difficult. This is a track where being precise is going to be important. The hairpin, we've seen plenty of stack-ups there. Just under 2 miles in length, and the important thing when it comes to this track, which was opened in 1975, saw kart racing come here in 1984 after about 9 years of Formula 1 competition, is where do you pass, JP? Where do you deploy the push to pass? You've got a chance down into turn 1, you've got a chance running yourself all the way on that backstretch down East Seaside Way into turn 9 and the penultimate couple of corners, but other than that, you've got to be patient.
Especially since if you end up trying to be over-aggressive, we've seen in several cases drivers outbrake themselves or over-push and slam into a tire barrier and collect a couple others with them. You don't want that to happen tonight. Turn 1, you mentioned that being one of the prime spots, because that's coming off East Shoreline Drive in towards Aquarium Way, where you can end up sending it a bit deeper on the brakes if you time it up well. The tough part is making sure you don't make contact with your opponent with the side pod, which would end up sending both of you into a tire barrier. You mentioned as well, when it comes to turn 6 comes to mind for me in particular, because it's coming down West Shoreline Drive and that flow of that racetrack, Arjuna. If you see drivers make mistakes out of turn 5, you shouldn't be surprised to see a couple make a pouncing move in throughout that section. And then you have that push to pass that could also come in through to turn 9, where we've seen a couple times last year drivers attempt that move and do it successful. In some cases.
Yes, true. And I mean, just look at the ISOWC for an example of how chaotic things can get if you try and make moves down at the hairpin. Couple of details to talk you through with qualifying underway and about 2.5 minutes left on the clock. 64 laps, the same race length that we had 12 months ago. The fuel stint is about 23, maybe 24 laps. Maybe we'll see some drivers do a 3-stop strategy, but with a pit delta of about 38 seconds, that very much is the slower call when it comes to the strategy games. Most drivers have elected to qualify on the red mark tire. Only one, Matthias Kraus in that 59 car, so far has elected to use the blacks, excuse me. Currently at the top, it's Adriano Pinheiro that leads the way. Phil Kraus has just jumped himself into second, but let's ride around this track on board with your defending series champion Adam Blocker and get a good sense for what this place is all about. Running yourself down East Shoreline Drive in towards turn 1. You can't use the track on the right hand side to gain an advantage, and you want to be careful clipping the curb on the inside, running into the fountain. Less is more here. The slower you're in, the faster you're out. And look at how close to the wall Adam Blocker is getting. A little bit loose as he runs himself in through turn 4, and this crucial off camber turn 5. Car is always trying to push away from you. The rear is always trying to slide away from you. Blocker keeps that nicely under control. Braking at the 150 board in towards turn 6. Blocker again very loose. Just look at how the car is responding to him over the bumps. This though, turn 8 is crucial. You can cut the corner on the inside, you roll the momentum, and you power yourself down East Seaside Way. 70 seconds left in qualifying. Blocker sits in third right now as he breaks down into turn 9. Less is more again here. The more you back it up, the smoother you go, the less you heat up your tires, the more speed you might find. Into the hairpin, down to first gear. Look at the amount of lock that you're putting on that car. Blockers through the final corner. This might be his final chance to go quick. A 107.462 is his benchmark. He improves marginally, but it's still only good enough to keep him in third position. Adriano Pinheiro might just have secured his first Lionheart pole position.
And just like that, Arjuna, that crown of top road course racer, which had 2 different drivers try and stake their claims at the end of the campaign last year, Locker and Kraus, may have upwards of 5 possibly fighting for it. Matt Taylor's been quick in practices throughout the week. He's amongst the top qualifiers we've seen in the pylon. But for Pinheiro to make this statement early going, that's going to be a huge, huge momentum shifter, I think, for his season after some of his bad luck last time out in terms of track position.
We have 42 cars ready to race. That is going to be a mad scramble on their run down into turn 1. 10 cars have elected not to put down a qualifying lap time. But just like that, the time for talk is done. The time for action is now. Let's go trackside here on the streets of Long Beach to take a look at your starting grid for the HyperX Grand Prix of Long Beach. And on pole position for the second time, he did it a couple of weeks ago, but he does it on a road course now. Adriano Pinheiro punches his ticket to the front of the field. He'll lead us to the green alongside Philip Kraus. Adam Blocker, quickest in practice, only 3rd quickest in qualifying. He'll line up alongside his teammate for Power Slide Adrenaline with Alexander Van der Sant. Matt Taylor and Connor Harrington complete the top 6. Great qualifying performance there from Matt Taylor. Joshua Chin, Michael O'Brien 7th and 8th. Great to have Joshua Chin back in the field. He loves to save some fuel. Can he save some tires to go quick? Caleb Bensi, George Sandman round out the top 10. George Sandman doing the road courses only this year as an independent driver, while Lionel Callisto inside of Isaac Morris, rounding out the top 12. Brian Beard, Mitchell Riggs, 13th and 14th, while Chris Fowler and Mike Rasmussen line up alongside one another on row 8. Adam Fraser and James Brandt complete the top 18, while rounding out the top 20, it's Andrew Marquez and Tyler Graf. Kite Bombers back, and Stefan Larkamp 21st and 22nd, while the Canadian Brian Carey, what a disappointing qualifying for him, all the way back in 23rd position. Bradley Sexton is alongside him, while Matthias Kraus and Andrew Kinsella right behind them. Matt Houston, Barrett Rolfe 27th and 28th. Barrett Rolfe, we know him more as a road course racer before we saw him in the Speedway Series. He's got lots of work to do there. Alexis Newsom, Paul Jenkins through the top 30. AJ Musselman, Joe Branch, the final cars with lap times on the board. Robert Malechka, Aaron Morgan, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, and Dustin Wardlow, the 36 cars at the front of your field. Alex Guyon, Jason Brophy, Tony Schowen, Ron Hacker, Chris Lanini, and Mike Rigney complete the field. Of note, Alex Guyon does have an end-of-line penalty to serve. What will that mean for him trying to work his way through the chaos? As always, we've got onboard cameras to work our way through, so let's quickly dive down trackside on what is a very short pace lap to talk at least about a couple of them here. Brian Beard has your Gomez Sim Industry on board. Makers of high-end esports equipment and controls. Visit GomezSimIndustry.com.
Connor Harrington tonight has the butt kicker on board. Sim racing is better with Butt Kicker. Visit thebuttkicker.com.
64 laps on the board, at least 2 pit stops, and plenty of chaos and carnage expected. You can see them stacking themselves up, coming through the fountain. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart, and this is the HyperX Grand Prix of Long Beach. We're racing in the international city. Look at how fanned out the field is already. Still cars struggling to work their way through the hairpin. Pinheiro leads, though, down into turn number 1, side by side. Van der Sande and Harrington squabbling amongst themselves. Harrington has managed to cycle in front of him. Single file through the fountain. It's what you expect to see, because too wide here does not work out. A little bit of bumper cars there as Adam Fraser, I think, got into the mix with one of his rivals down at the end of the top 10, but cleanly through back onto West Shoreline Drive we come. Nice clean start at the front.
No major stack-ups, and that is a good sign for the first few moments, to say the very least, because last time out in a couple races we've seen as of late here, drivers have really brought up some sparks flying up this time coming through turn 8, but already Kraus wants to make a move.
Down the inside on the heavy braking zone, and he's got that move done. Pinheiro now might come under fire. Pinheiro, of note, has started on the black primary mark tires. Not a bad call, but Blocker is not waiting. Blocker pounces. Harrington tries to follow him through. Working through lap number 1, Phil Kraus leads the way. Adam Blocker second, and already on the button you can see Tower lit up like a Christmas tree. Blocker trying to close on Kraus. Harrington trying to clear himself of Adriano Pinheiro. Safely, though, they managed to figure it all out. Of note, Adam Blocker, Connor Harrington have already burned through 2 of their 10 push-to-passes.
Just trying to really find the way to keep up with Phil Kraus, I think, knowing his experience. But I find this intriguing. Last year, a majority of the drivers preferred to start on the red marked tires, with a few starting off in the blacks. Trying to avoid the blacks. More than half the field this time have chosen the black walled tires to start off the race. Paul Jenkins, though, has had an issue towards the back. He's our first tow of the night.
A couple of cars did start on pit lane, and I don't think that's an awful call if we're being completely honest with ourselves there, JP, because it's so much carnage that you can expect on these opening laps. It's a nice, easy way to keep out of harm's way. Here comes Van der Sande down the inside of Pinheiro. Those black tires struggling to get up to temperature, and Van der Sande wants to try and follow forward with his teammate.
And the interesting thing I found when watching along with some of the IndyCar Open races this year, Arjuna, has been Alexander Van der Sande in particular ran just strictly that time slot to start off the week, top split action. And he usually finished in second behind Adam Blocker, funnily enough. I'm curious if Van der Sande can find a way to jump in front of Adam Blocker in Lionheart competition here tonight. With how quick he's been, it's just been a matter of finding a way to run the run to me.
That's big trouble, and that's Joshua Chin, who's had to tow back to pit lane on his return to Lionheart. It's all gone pairs up for Joshua Chin. Let's take a look at a couple of replays then. We'll start with what happened to Paul Jenkins, overcooking it into turn 1. That's so easy to do, and that, I believe, was Joe Branch, who appeared on the scene of the incident with no time to respond, and that's how quickly things can change. One more look here, and then let's ride on board with Joe Branch. You can see car comes back into the racing line, and no time for Branch to respond.
That explains what happened to Branch indeed, and there was good contact with Bensi in particular in the battle into turn 1. And what did I say about the risk of going side by side? If one driver sends it too deep, you end up seeing somebody hit the tire barrier.
Well, I think this is going to be deja vu. So let's watch now what happens to Chin. Is there going to be assistance here? Car's down is inside, and Chin just tries to cover it off. That's Bensi there. Oh, that we might need a couple more looks at that one.
Yeah, might need to look on from above a little bit here possibly, because watch where the defensive mark comes in with the send. You see Bensi tries to back it up just right there.
He was committed. That's for sure. We'll see if we can grab one more look maybe on board with Caleb Bensi here. Just look how late he goes, and he's on the button. And yeah, by the time he backs out, I don't know if Chin really should have cut the nose off there, but I can understand why he wanted to do so. So 41 started. We are down to 38 still running, and that is plenty of cars here on this track. Traffic management might prove to be a big factor as well. Left side of your screen, let's quickly show you the tires that these drivers have elected to start on. Bensi's down in 7th on those alternates. Pinheiro, Taylor splitting the top 4 from the rest of those red mark alternate tires. But you look further down the field, the more you see those black primary tires to start this race off.
And remember, when it came to last year's race, the drivers who went in turn usually are red, red, black, or red, black, red, ended up having some strong performances by the end, because some did make the gamble of trying 2 sets of blacks or scattering about when they took the blacks. But it just seemed to cycle the time that the red tires were quicker with the overall pace. But as you talked about, the differences are going to be a bit bigger this year compared to some of the changes that have happened over the year. Right now, the pace difference a bit more tighter, I've noticed. About only 9/10 difference between Kraus and Pinheiro compared to what was more than a second and nearly a half last year.
Let's talk a little bit about that traffic for a second. First through 38th, where the car's still running, split by 45 seconds. So a lap time here about 70 seconds, so not far away from seeing the traffic play its part. Top 2 split by 7/10, then 1.5 back to Connor Harrington. Van der Sant runs in 4th. Then 2.5 seconds further back is Adriano Pinheiro. Remember, 1 stint on each of the tires. So those first 4 cars, well, will they take the black tires in the middle stint? Will they take the black tires at the end? I'd wager that you want to be on the red tires at the end of the race to be able to defend a little bit more, but by the same token, JP, it does mean that given that we're relatively close on fuel, right? You have to do a bit of fuel saving in 1 stint to make it without a splash and dash. You're burning through the entire tire life that you can have. There is no backing up that you can really do to try and make things a little bit easier. As Ron Hacker, I think, might have had a moment. We'll try and grab what happened to him, but you can only do so much to try and preserve the tires. If you're on the reds at the very end of the race, you might start to feel the pressure.
Absolutely. Oh! And big trouble, this is Kerry and company.
I think Matthias Kraus might have got mixed up in that, so a couple of things for us to look through then, as back to the front we go. Close between Kraus and Blocker really are just starting to stretch their legs and pull away from those behind them. Brian Carey looks to have taken the toe to pit lane, so is Matthias Kraus. Will they go back onto track? We'll have to find out. Joe Branch, by the way, has elected to continue racing so far, as leaders now have 6 laps in the books. Nice clean start on lap 1, but from there the chaos has started to pick itself up. Plenty of action, not just at the front, but up and down through the field. Look at this train that's formed now behind Michael O'Brien, George Sandman, Lionel Callisto, Isaac Morris, Mitchell Riggs, all in this fight for what is 8th position, excuse me.
Just keeping things calm and cool, and this was to be expected for tonight. Rhythm racing is the name of the game when it comes to Long Beach, where if you lose your cool, start trying to push very hard, you burn through that tire life very quickly. And in turn, if you start making mistakes, you end up piling up the potential damage around the race car and potentially bring others with you. So in other words, if you're someone such as this grouping, you just have to wait. You have to be calm. You can't be pressing too hard. If you start pressing, you start making major mistakes at a track such as this.
Won't get a replay of what happened with Brian Carey because it was technical related. We caught the tail end of it. Matthias Kraus came up to Carey after that technical issue had already begun, and he really had nowhere to go. Both cars, as mentioned, are down on towards pit lane. Lap 8 now, working in the 64 lap affair. Look at how close though Blocker is now onto the back of Phil Kraus. How early does he want to put the pressure on? Maybe what we'll see is we know Blocker likes to do some fuel saving. Will he save some fuel? Will he save some tires? We're about to find out, because there you can see it's a car length, maybe 2 car lengths splitting these 2 cars.
It's something we've seen, as you mentioned, a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if Adam Blocker's thinking it's a little early to try and go for a bit of a bold move. Spank on and save on those push to passes, save a bit of that gas, help with the strategy, because we've seen Blocker try that and actually save a bit more gas compared to Sage Karam in that race, hence the difference in lead laps coming into play. So in other words, if it opens up, I think he takes it, but if it doesn't open up easily, why not just wait and see if he slips up?
Now, the undercut is likely to be more powerful here than the overcut, so that is something to keep in mind, as that's Mitchell Riggs down in towards turn 9. That's pointed in the wrong direction. That's another car that finds itself out of the race. This one might be self-inflicted. We'll have to go and find out, I guess. But one by one, they're dropping like dominoes. Let's go straight then and take a look at what happened here. Running themselves down East Seaside Way. Looks okay into the braking zone. And then, yep, Rio just comes around a little too quickly into the wall. That breaks the left rear suspension immediately. Does a good job to hold the brakes. Lets the train of cars go on through. And I think Dan realizes just how damaged that car is.
Yeah, I was about to say, look, decent under brakes, but also at the same time, Arjuna sent it a little deep in said brakes. With how, on top of that, kicking out towards that corner apex, how he wasn't getting as close to some of the drivers as we've seen when hitting the brake marks right towards that curb. So I think that mixture may have been a bit of a factor there in that incident.
It's not just the battle for 9th that's stacking itself up, but there's also now a battle brewing for, I believe, this is 12th on back. Brian Beard leads the train that then sees Chris Fowler, Adam Fraser, Andrew Marquez, Jay Brandt, Tyler Groff, Mike Rasmus, Kite Bommersback, Stefan Larkamp, even Bradley Sexton, Andrew Kinsella, Barrett Rolfe, Robert Malechka can finally take a break. That's 12 cars all in a line.
Very different look, I will say, when it comes to Brian Beard this season, but absolutely been looking very calm and precise, some of these drivers in this pack, all of them just essentially in a draft train. Just waiting to see if anyone has some mistakes built up. Just waiting to try and get things sorted out. Just maintain patience. That's the critical thing towards trying to sort things out. You don't want to end up being that driver who says, I'm in 20th, I'd like to pass 7 cars right now. It usually doesn't work well.
No, it doesn't. I think traffic is really going to start playing its part very, very shortly, because Dustin Wardlow, who I believe just had a moment there, you can see him just working his way across the start-finish line, is going to now get very, very close to your leaders coming through. Let's take a look at what happened here on the replay. Oh, just locks up the tire and then has to... That's nice. That's nice handling, to be honest, JP. Good, respectful driving as well. You can see waiting until the road is clear to be able to go back. That's good car control to spin that one around.
Yeah, just knew that he was missing that corner, just aimed for the runoff area. Did a full steering flick to be able to keep it on going without impeding the traffic. He did mention pre-race to fans watching along the various platforms that he had a 1/4 inch of brake pedal travel that went from no brake to a full lockup. I'm wondering if that may have been a bit of a factor there too.
We're looking now at Lionel Callisto putting the pressure onto George Sandman as they're falling back very slightly from Michael O'Brien. Sandman's on those red alternate tires compared to black primaries for those around him. The lap time delta, or the difference in speed between the fastest runner on the reds and those on blacks is interesting, because, well, the fastest guys find ways to go fast. Phil Kraus keeping the momentum going as lap traffic peels off onto pit road to avoid causing any sort of chaos there for the leaders. Gap opens up very slightly with 10 laps now complete and in the books, about 9/10 of a second between them. You can see some side-by-side further up in towards turn 1. This is when things get dangerous if you're the leader.
You need to be able to choose the right spots to make these types of moves, or you can have the traffic end up being courteous and give that respective space. If you have a driver who isn't willing to give so much space, such as the one they just reached with Tony Shalvin off the corner, that can impede one or both of the drivers in said battle and open up the door for drivers to try and jump on through. We've seen it a few times as of late, especially where lap traffic management can play a huge factor. Traffic giveth, traffic taketh.
Ah, yes, the classic radio show limited line as blocker. You should just look at the onboards, how much they are muscling these cars around. If you've driven the R18 in years past and you're wondering, well, that's not how you could go quick when I used to drive this car. Big tire update about 18 months ago really changed the car's behavior on these road courses. Much more realistic, much more slidey in a way that you tend to see in the real world, but still not something that we've gotten completely accustomed to. Alexander Van der Sande on the push to pass to try and close up to Connor Harrington as he burns through one of those 10 allotments of the 70 horsepower spurts. He's not going to close up close enough to get a lunge down to the inside, but at the very least minimizes the distance between these two cars. Halfway through the first stint of the race, JP, this is when that car, especially on the red tires, will start to fall away from you. It's not just on the traction, but it's also under braking as well.
And I've noticed this with a lot of the competitors, actually, where compared to last year, even towards the end of the run, with last running of this race at Long Beach, the red tires still had a couple tenths on the blacks. This year, Pinheiro, I'm specifically seeing on that strategy, is outpacing the drivers on that alternate compound tire with the red wall tires at the moment, where right now, the fall-off is more than 2 seconds for some of the competitors who started on the reds. That may fall into Pinheiro's way if he can continue to consistently outrun some of his fellow drivers in front of him who are on the reds right now, where he might cycle in front of them by the end, depending on their strategy call.
Let's grab a quick word with Brian Carey, who's standing by right now. Brian, disappointing start to your race. Technical issues meant that you didn't really even get past those opening salvos of the race.
Yeah, I mean, I had a bad qualifying in the sense that I made a mistake on my one fast lap, lost like 3/10 of a, actually a little more, 3/10 of a second, thinking it's like, okay, it's going to cost me a couple places, found myself in 20 seconds, so my mission was to just try to stay safe. I was in a pack of cars, and then I had a hardware failure that I hadn't had before. It totally kind of froze up for a second. Then I was back on the track. I was in I mean, it's Long Beach. There's really not a good place to get out of the way. But before I had a chance to do anything, there was cars just flashing either side of me. Then I was getting hit, and then I think, if I check correctly, I think I ruined Mateus's race by doing it. So I'd really like to apologize to him for that, and just for the chaos that I might have caused. But yeah, it's disappointing for a lot of reasons.
I mean, this is a track as well where just getting that rhythm is difficult. The setup, there's something that drivers have talked about a lot. Give us your perspective after your practice about how you go fast with this particular fixed setup that drivers are dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I know that, I mean, it's no secret that Andrew, it sets up a lot of the setups here, and you'd think that would be an advantage for me, but it was so far off of what we'd, or at least what I'd want on this track, so it took a while to get used to it. It was almost like relearning a new car, actually, here. I mean, I've had a lot of laps of Long Beach. I mean, I've had some success on the Open broadcast, an amazing result in ISOWC. Really do like this track, and I do well here, but it was like you turn right, it goes left kind of thing, like those kind of, like you really had to retrain your brain to get it. And I think I was getting it too. Aside from my little mistake qualifying, I felt very confident about my race pace here. And yeah, but it was difficult to get a grip on. This thing is, it's wiggly. It's definitely wiggly.
Well, thanks for joining us, Brian. Sorry on the run. Looking forward to seeing you in action, hopefully next time out in just a week's time. So not long to go before you can make amends.
Yeah, hopefully I'll talk to you next time, and I'll be happy after the race with a podium. But we'll see then, but thanks, Arjuna.
Brian Carey stops by the RaceSpotTV booth to give us his opinion on, well, the setup itself, and then talk through the incident that he had. We're seeing now Kraus and Blocker now still the dominant two, running further and further into the sunset clear of Connor Harrington, Alexander Van der Sande, who are having a fun fight of their own, although it must be said that at least for now, it's taking a while for them to be able to close up to those in front. Here is that battle at the front of the field. And JP, it was interesting to hear that this was like driving a new car for him. I mean, it is... You build setups to be comfortable for yourself, right? You need speed, but you need the confidence to be able to push it. And that's what a fixed setup does. It levels the playing field.
Absolutely. And when it comes to open racing, the thought process is you end up building the car to be quicker than your competitors. But when it comes to fixed racing, and this is the tough thing for a lot of drivers, and what some teams in turn actually take a lot of stock in technical alliances, with fixed setups, you end up having to tailor your driving style and learn how that setup drives to be able to sort out how to make that particular setup fast for you on the racetrack and faster than your other competitors. You don't have that ability to be able to tweak the setup to say, okay, let's pile on 15% more tape in a stock car, or let's change the angle of the wing. You don't have that flexibility. You have to be able to learn to make passes like this with the same exact equipment in terms of what you're driving in regards to the cars themselves and what you have inside the machinery for them virtually.
Good move there from Lionel Kalisto, who got on the button quite late to be able to run himself past. You saw a brief look there at the push-to-pass numbers for the field. Looks like, by the way, Alexander Van der Sande might have had a couple of issues with traffic. He's now 1.2 back from Connor Harrington at the head of the field, as they'll now try and close themselves up. Closer and closer to the pit stop window. Lap 20, likely the earliest that you might see a driver elect to come down. Although, having said that, that would be a bit early. Unless you're going to try and switch to the black tires. And going back to those requirements to use both tires as well, the black tire will take a little bit more to heat itself up. So those opening laps of the stint might just be a little bit more treacherous, not as quick. Chris Lanini, another car making a mistake, this time down into turn 1. And the driver able to spin it around pretty quickly with the big power that these cars have. Nicely done to minimize the damage and the pain felt there. Here's a look at your movers and shakers. Lionel Kalisto's gained 3, as has Connor Harrington so far in this race. Down the order, you've got some big movers in the form of Jason Brophy, who is plus 11, Lanini and Rigney, they're both plus 10. So do watch for those cars working their way up through the field. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, the first car to roll himself onto pit lane and gingerly into his box as well. Looks like Stefan Larkamp is having his own technical issue right now, so it's not the first time. This past Monday, there were plenty of drivers, JP, that got mixed up with some technical issues, no fault of their own.
Yes, several actually had them at the exact same time, which was the surprising thing, and we talked a bit during that respective race. In some parts of the country, severe weather was impacting various different states in the United States in particular. And now, when it comes to Larkamp, unfortunately looking like those impacted by technical side of things. Of note, Luis Gonzalez Nunez did have to make a wing change, it appears, 13.5 seconds in the pit box, and that is the first early stop, I should say, of this run, which could make things interesting for him the rest of the way. Let's take a look, though, at Pinheiro, because right before that, I noticed one thing. He's caught up to Harrington and Van der Sande with the black wall tires. He is quicker than them, in fact, by almost a full second.
It was half a second or so compared to Van der Sande last time by. I think the traffic didn't really help out Connor Harrington, and that's why even Van der Sande has closed up very slightly. But there's the magic number. 15 laps or so into the run, things start to turn around as Van der Sande getting very wide on the run through the penultimate corner on the entry in towards the hairpin. There you can see the gap that has closed on up. Again, I don't know. I said this past Monday in the iRacing IndyCar Open Series, starting on the black mark tire. I don't think it always works off. Pinheiro's already at an 8-second deficit to Kraus in front and now has roadblocks in effect in front of him. And because of the way the tires work, while Harrington, Van der Sande might elect to come in this lap if they really wanted to, if you're Pinheiro, you very much are looking to extend the stint as far as possible. Here comes Kraus, here comes Blocker on the run down into turn 8, back onto EC sideway. Lap traffic in the form of Chris Lanini will get all the way out of harm's way. Will either of these cars come in this time by?
That's going to be the big true question right now. And when you break things down in terms of the math, last year, around this time were those stops, around 21 laps or so into a run each. Split things up fairly evenly. 44 to go this time by. Looking like they're going to be able to stretch it out a little bit further to hit those respective marks. Try and keep those tires on as long as they can to minimize the potential possibly of being on the other compound, as we've seen from last year.
Let's grab a quick look at the other featured onboards for today. We talked to you about two on that very, very short run down into turn one. Let's quickly run you through the other two. Matt Taylor has the HyperX onboard camera. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. Taylor is 7 seconds, almost 8 seconds back of Adriano Pinheiro, although he is 3 seconds clear of Caleb Bensi and has plenty of clean air for the time being. Luis Gonzalez Nunez has your SimRace 24/7 onboard camera. Visit simrace247.com, where sim racing is for everyone. Nunez has come out right in the thick of a pack of traffic. In front of him, though, is a car full position. That's Mike Rigney in the 00. Of course, early pit stop for Luis Gonzalez Nunez. Here comes, as Rigney is going to pull out the way, here comes onto pit lane Robert Malechka. Again, not setting a qualifying lap time for him. He's been out of town this past week, electing to watch some baseball, spring training, I should say.
Yes.
So he flew to Phoenix, enjoying the action there. Landed this morning after a red-eye flight. In fact, that was an 8.3 second pit stop. Here comes Harrington trying to get the undercut working on Alexander Van der Sande.
Bensi also trying the same strategy, so that window wide open, it looks like, for majority of the drivers. Van der Sande, we've seen save a lot of fuel in the past. Probably going to come in this upcoming time by as a few of the others. Nice and clean and nice and quick when it comes to Harrington. It looks like Blackwall tires for him in the primaries.
You can see now up on your screen, Kraus and Blocker still out there on track. Harrington will go down a considerable distance. And as we jump back to your leader, excuse me, we I think accidentally went to a replay there. Your race leaders actually are now coming in towards the final corner. Lap 22, does Blocker try to get the undercut? He's not, and he's going to stay out there an extra lap. That's an interesting call. Phil Kraus onto pit lane.
So Phil Kraus, keep in mind, was in the clean air and leading Adam Blocker on the racetrack, and it's not a surprise to see Blocker in turn be able to stretch it a bit further. We talked about the potential of him saving. Looks like it's that case. Van der Sande doing the same right now with pitting this time by as well. The interesting thing, though, will be the strategy. Remember, Phil Kraus, when it came to some of the races where he battled with Blocker last year, trying to mix things up, I think he's learned from some of that. He has kept to the primary strategy. So primary red seems to be the call in majority of the field now.
Let's see where Van der Sande comes out in comparison to Harrington. He's already passed the pace car, but you can see it's a long way to those green cones where he will be able to release himself off the limiter. Harrington's already up to speed and sweeping his way through. There comes Harrington, and in fact the overcut has worked primarily because lap traffic has played its part. Van der Sande is going to have to sweep himself out wide. Oh, they almost touched it, the two of them there, but they've just about made it work, and the overcut works a treat for Van der Sande. For Powerslide, they've got their fingers crossed. The same holds true for Blocker.
Well, what did I say about the ability to be able to keep up pace with the old tires? It was very beneficial. I will say this on the entry. Van der Sande really tested the abilities to get to the cone-to-cone. Adam Blocker now in for reference as well. And keep this in mind, if you say, have a car in front of you, that can impact your entry, especially if you're, say, one of those really confident on the brakes. I noticed this when it came to Van der Sande. He nearly hit the car in front of him on his entry alone as Blocker off and away.
A bit quicker in the box, 3/10 quicker for Blocker on the box itself. You can see the Hornet's Nest, though. That is the pit exit for Blocker as Kraus works his way back out onto track. Where's Kraus going to come out in comparison to Blocker? There's the pink, there's the blue. Blocker's done it as well. The overcut has worked. Lap traffic might play a huge factor here. The two of them side by side into the fountain. Kraus has those tires up to temperature and pressure. He stayed on the red mark alternate tires, and he holds on just to the race lead. Alexander Van der Sande has managed to lose it as well. I've just seen he's taken the tow back to pit lane.
Bad luck for Van der Sande, but the reason for the screen there is, just out of the shot there for a second, Phil Kraus nearly went into the side pod of Adam Blocker in that battle for the net race lead. That could have been disastrous when it comes to the complexion of this race. But Van der Sande, as you mentioned, having disaster strike for himself to the point where he's in the pit lane without an entire front nose.
Let's see the replay if we can. Here we go. RaceSpotTV replay up on your screen. 24 laps now in the books. Pinheiro does pit from the race lead, by the way, so he extended the stint, and oh, it's coming through turn 8. He's trying to get the power down. Tires not up to the right window, potentially. Asking a little bit too much of them, and Van der Sant, well, he pays the price.
Yeah, and I noticed there too nearly clipped the left side with the tire barrier as well, which may have impacted that a touch bit. But I will say this for the race lead, as Pinheiro has cycled to 4th now with the incident to the 96. Kraus, very brave, I will say, on that entry to be able to hold on to the lead, knowing how important it was to stay in front with how difficult it is to pass for said lead with the clean air compared to the aero wash at some of the tracks. And as we've seen in cases at Long Beach in the past a bit, Blocker's going to have a big challenge ahead of him.
Okay. Is Kraus on the reds or is Kraus on the blacks?
In terms of the data shown...
Yeah, because I think we're getting conflicting data, I do believe. You can see left side of your screen. It does show that Kraus is on those black mark primary tires. However, when you look at that car, those are reds.
I'm confused now.
I'll see if I can get on the horn to one of the members at the private label Team Hype, but...
This is the same strategy he pulled at Phillip Island, remember. This did not work out in the end.
It was Phillip Island and it was Road America, if I remember correctly, JP.
Yes, and remember, Kraus had to go defensive the rest of that respective stint, for the final stint, I should say, and he ended up losing the lead with under about 6-7 laps to go in that race. For Phillip Island in particular, that comes to mind out of the two. So this is a major gamble if this is the call. Now the main question, though, is how is Blocker keeping up if this is the true compound right now with him being on the blacks? That's the big question, because they are running the pace markers on being in the blacks.
Well, they are stuck in some traffic, so that's always going to help the car that has the slightly worse theoretical tires. Remember, there's no setup games that are going on here. It's all about the tires that they're electing to run, how they play the strategy, how they adapt, how they use those in-car tools. I have sent a message to the guys down at the private label Team Hype pit box. We'll see what the word is. Kraus looking to make it 2 in a row and trying to stop Adam Blocker in his 100th race start in Lionheart IndyCar Series competition from winning his 33rd race. An incredible streak of success for him, winning almost a third of the races that he's competed in so far. Remember, Blocker's real-world commitments in the NTT IndyCar Series as a trackside engineer with the Chevy engine program will mean that he does a number of races not from home, as I think Kraus got into the wall there.
Yeah, both these drivers, if anything, have been very close to scraping at least once or twice throughout these past couple runs. I'm curious, though, if he actually did indeed scrape it when it comes to Kraus. I think he hit the sidewall of the tires against the wall.
Whatever the case may be, it was close and closer than you want to be. On board with Blocker, who is definitely on the black mark tire. And again, we apologize for the confusion, but we can only do so much. We're getting 2 conflicting bits of information. We'll try and deconflict them as soon as we can. But Blocker has got the pressure dialed up to maximum out of the final corner. Kraus feels that pressure so much, he has to get on the push to pass. They're now equal with 8 push to pass usages left in this race. But this, if it is really red versus black tires, is a commanding drive from Adam Blocker in this opening portion of the second stint of the race.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider when it comes to this possibility, let's put it that way. We'll say a couple of our drivers have had some issues. Andrew Kinsella, we talked about being a big part of all of these respective setups driven. He's been in the pit lane for a few minutes now with a tow, so I believe he's also had some issues in regards to after his pit stop sequence. Outside of that, though, Frazier had to get a wing change, Lanini had to get a wing change, Van de Sant's back running after almost 2 minutes of damage repair. And as well, the biggest mover, Malechka the third, Brophy, and Guyon are having a fight for that because Brophy's up 17 on a road course.
And that's after his end-of-line penalty as well. So let's give full credit to Alex Guyon to bounce back after that. Let's go and... You're right, I did miss, by the way, that something had happened to Andrew Kinsella. Let's see what happened here. So first he's working his way back out onto track, and it's going to be into the fountain. 2 wide, never works out, and I believe that's one of the Ascari Autosports cars. Not sure exactly which one, but let's get back to this one later. What has just happened to Adriano Pinheiro?
Pinheiro had been picking up time. He had been within 9 seconds. I think he tried to make a send on Connor Harrington, and it just worked disaster because I think he hit the right side of the wall in the hairpin.
Does he have damage? I don't know. Have to try and figure this one out. They were close coming into that corner as well. Remember, Pinheiro is now switched onto the reds compared to the black tires for Connor Harrington. Let's see if we can pick this one up here. Kinsella, by the way, has rolled himself back out onto track. In towards turn 9 they come. Pinheiro backs out of it. Now you can pass at the hairpin. Adam Blocker proved that, especially when you've got this delta on tire performance. Harrington tries to squeeze, but that's all fair. Pinheiro just cannot make the corner. You can't put enough lock into that car physically. And there it went. Pinheiro has lost a whole bunch of ground that he's got to make back up.
I was about to say, when we just seen that right there, Arjuna, I don't think it was a squeeze. I think it was just a bit of a lock with the brakes that sent him straight there on that entry, with him trying to commit to that corner of the tight hairpin apex. And now Pinheiro's going to have to put in the work all over again to get back to Harrington. He can't afford that right now. Robert Malechka III, we just gave him praise. Altair's curse is struck. The 91 is in the pits and out of the car.
Yeah, and that's going to be my fault. I have a feeling. Let's see if we can figure this one out. Remember, limited practice for that 31 car. Into turn 1. Looks okay right now. Out understeer city. Into the wall. And that is significant damage and basically straight back to pit road in the 91 car. Not a good day so far if you're a Powerslide Motorsports fan.
Yeah, a lot of craziness has been going on. By the way, the issue that happened to Larkamp with this technical issue was not involving the potential of network connectivity. It was his computer overheating and his computer shutting down in the middle of the race while battling with Bomber's Back. So that's why the 62's race is also done. Moral of the story, make sure you get fans for your computer. I don't have fans for my computer yet, somehow. It has not done that yet.
Oh, close into the hairpin. Just about managed to slow it down in time. Did your defending champion. About to reach the halfway marker of this race as well, JP. Blocker's on the charge, and remember that he went longer last time by and kind of opposed to what we thought, where we thought the undercut might work nicely. Instead, it was the overcut in both the battles for first and third that were able to gain a net advantage.
Yeah, this has been a really intriguing fight, I will say, because if Blocker came out in front, I think there's a chance we see Blocker try and run away, obviously, based on the fact he was trying to save a bit of the gas there in the first run. But the main thing that came up to mind was also, when it comes to pit stops, you can't make adjustments to the car outside of the ARBs, but you can adjust how much gas you put in. That may have been a bit of a factor with the save. The question is going to be, how will all this strategy fare out in the second half of tonight?
It's been a fascinating race so far, but still plenty of laps to go on the streets of Long Beach. You're watching RaceSpotTV and the HyperX Grand Prix of Long Beach. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on the streets of the international city.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the streets of Long Beach for round 2 in the 2022 Lionheart IndyCar Series and the HyperX Grand Prix of Long Beach. My name is Arjuna Kankipati. As always, alongside is Justin Prince, and what has been a fascinating race so far saw a relatively clean lap 1, but from there, bit by bit, cars have fallen by the wayside. 41 took to the green flag, just 19 are left on the lead lap. It's been a race where Phil Krause and Adam Blocker have been the dominant two. They are still split by just half a second out on track. Third place, now coming under pressure, is Connor Harrington as your pole sitter Adriano Pinheiro looks to try and work his way back onto the podium. Plenty of tire strategies and interesting things have been going on so far. JP, what do you make of this first opening salvo in the race?
Well, first of all, Phil Krause and Adam Blocker were some of the top drivers at the end of last year for road course racing and Lionheart IndyCar Series competition. They're the best two drivers to start off 2022 in the Lionheart IndyCar Series in road course competition. So that hasn't changed. Pinheiro, though, showcased that the different strategy didn't work out the way I think he intended. With some of the mistakes, yes, that built up this run of the battle now going on for third, but also when it comes to the difficulty of making the primary tire work towards the end of the runs in this race compared to the alternate tire, because while the fall-off differences have changed and have been more tightly compact compared to past years, Pinheiro, seeing the effects right now, that put him 12 seconds back as a result after having the pole from the get-go and immediately losing in the first lap.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting call if you ask me to elect to do that. I think that based on what we've seen as Alexis Newsom had a moment through turn 5, that off-camber corner that has sent her down a couple of positions in that bright yellow and red machine. Just losing the traction, so easy to do. I think if you win pole position, you basically have a need to start on the reds to try and control the pace of the race. That's ultimately what pole position earns you the right to do. Back in that fight for now 6th position, we look as Caleb Bensi comes under fire from Lionel Callisto. Both cars, are on the black primary compound of tire. Isaac Morris not too far behind. Isaac Morris, a driver that we did see compete in a single race in the ISOWC. Good road pace when it came to Road America until a landmine, something that I think a lot of people would not have seen in recent memory, especially here on iRacing, decided to rear its head and send Isaac Morris first upside down and then back onto pit road and to the tail end of the field, but had a good quiet start to this road course race, plus 4 positions from where he qualified. Like to remind you as well that today, and indeed this entire month, HyperX is doing a Loot Drop 2. It's a global marketing thing where there's a month's worth of promotion, so make sure that you get involved. Plenty of discounts on the tires, on the merchandise, excuse me, that's the words that I'm looking for, live broadcasting, excuse me please, but plenty of discounts. If you want some HyperX gear, now is the time to pick some up. Bensi responds late on the button as he tries to defend from Callisto behind. Pinheiro's lost some time again with the traffic. He's now 1.3 back from Connor Harrington. Yep, out front. Still just 0.4 of a second. Still, we don't know. We haven't had confirmation yet, JP. What tire is Phil Krause on? It looks visually like he's on the red alternate tire, which would mean he's got to switch to the black primary tires at the end of this race. However, the data that is being reported in the simulator says that he's on the black primary tire.
Yeah, that's still intriguing to me, and these are things that can happen when it comes to virtual racing. And that, I think, I'm not surprised that they are trying to keep that close to the chest, because I think if you're someone like Blocker and then find out oh, we're on the same compound, I shouldn't be panicking, it's fine. Then you see the red wall and probably think, okay, is he trying to save very hard right now, and am I truly keeping up on the pace? Those are a lot of different things that can happen, and it's probably that sense of confusion almost, Arjuna, can kind of play into your advantage, where you kind of don't want your competitor to know the sure answer.
Yes, but by the same token, I kind of disagree with something you just said there, where if they're on the same compound of tire, I think Blocker has to be a little bit more worried, because
I know.
I don't know where he's going to make a pass happen right now. It would have to be surely in the pit window. We saw the overcut work nicely, but out on track, they're finding so much traffic. It's so difficult to get the run to try and make a pass happen. I just don't think it's going to happen. And kind of going back to that point as Bradley Sexton and Andrew Marquez side by side in toward the fountain section. Oh, the 63 car just about holds on there. But just kind of to that point, Adriano Pinheiro, now 1.9 seconds back from Connor Harrington, feeling the pain on the tires, feeling the pain with traffic as well.
Yeah, every time I think Pinheiro's gotten a chance to make the pass on Harrington, it's just not worked. It's now to the point where Pinheiro, that difference in the tire compounds, compared to most drivers, is no longer an advantage with reds compared to the blacks. And that's the major thing I noticed. At around halfway to the run, for most of the field, they were slower than those who started on the primaries. The only other drivers who were able to outpace them still in the alternates, Kraus, Blocker, a bit with Harrington, a bit with Van de Samp before he had his incident, and a couple others, and that's about it. That's the talent level we're talking about here, and that ability to stretch every last ounce of advantage out of the alternative tires to be able to outrun drivers who are running the primary once the fall-off kicks in.
And a bit of oversteer there for Lionel Kalisto, but gathering the car up nicely as we ride on board with Isaac Morris. Down his back straightaway into the penultimate couple of corners. Just trying to take a look. The George Sandman might have lost some time in traffic by himself. He's now fallen just off this battle inside of the top 10. You've got Michael O'Brien, who's 9 seconds down the road from the guys that we're watching right now, and further 4.5 back to that 06, making road course only appearances in 2022. Great to have the Sandman back in our field here today. Fighting up and down through the field. Let's quickly just cycle through some of the fights. 15th on back. Marquez still in front of Bradley Sexton, Kite Bomer's back, Adam Fraser, as well as Tyler Graf. Let's take this opportunity, actually, good timing, to talk about the driver of that number 12. Adam Fraser in the number 12 black and white Dallara IR18 is your Moser Racing driver profile. 43 starts, 7 top 10s, a single top 5, but his best finish of third at Pocono, well, that was 12 months ago, last year. It's good that this year Pocono is a Triple Crown race, so double points are on the line. Fraser will be hoping to get a good run here today. Oh, well, here in a couple of weeks.
And remember, when it comes to Pocono, and I remember watching especially some of the various historic videos that had come into play with tracks like Pocono in particular. Remember, Pocono was a part of the original Triple Crown when it came to IndyCar action during the 1970s. Then you had Pocono, you had Indianapolis, and then you had some of the Western. You had at some point, Trenton was in the mix, I believe, at one point. You had some of the tracks based out of California, like Auto Club Speedways, it's now called at one point as part of the Triple Crown. That's changed a lot over the years. And of course, Pocono was a huge part of a lot of big moments. Speaking of big moments.
Yeah, it looks like Alexis Newsom will grab a look at that, but back out front. It closed up again between Kraus and Blocker, and Kraus is on the button again. 7 usages for him. Might try and put a car between him and Adam Blocker. That's the 33 of Barrett Rolfe. He's able to do so very, very smoothly, very, very calmly. That's the speed that we've expected from Rolfe, and this is where patience is the name of the game. But Barrett Rolfe helps out as Ron Hacker has parked it on the apex down in towards turn 4, just trying to stay out of harm's way. What has happened now to Dustin Wardlow as well? All sorts of things going out on track.
I think Ron Hacker was just trying to let the leaders go in a Very scary way to do so, and another car with a problem.
That's Michael O'Brien, who's lost the front left wing, portion of the wing, but also has taken significant left front suspension damage. I said it was all kicking off. I didn't realize the extent to which it was all kicking off. Looks like Isaac Morris has dived down to pit lane. Should be the final time with 22 laps to go in this race. But poor Michael O'Brien, you can see he's still stranded at the hairpin, trying to find a safe time to roll himself onto the pit lane. It's not like you can in the real world where you can shortcut that hairpin and make your way straight down to the pit lane. Unfortunately for Michael O'Brien, he is going to have to wait the eternity to get back out and get back onto track. Here's a look at his onboard view. What happened? Loses the rear end early, slides, an agonizing slide into the tire wall, and then has a long run down into turn 9 where that left front wheel is wobbling for all it's worth.
And of course, with this chassis essentially broken, that essentially led to his very rough time getting to the pit lane. But the pit window's open. Phil Krause has ducked in to the lane. He's completed the stop, and he's taken a page out of Blocker's book. Put in a touch bit less fuel, it looks like, Arjuna, possibly an 8.7 second stop, trying to make sure there's only enough needed to make it to the end for 22 laps. That's all he needs to make it to the end on gas.
So it looks like from our data that he's on the red tires now, but I'm not sure. Visually, it's red tires again, so it would indicate to me that he did take the black primaries. And Blocker's being held up in traffic. Blocker, this is not ideal, and he's going to come in with traffic as well. Oh, the pain just mounts for Adam Blocker. Now Krause has made a mistake. Krause on cold tires. Has he just lost the lead of the race? That lap traffic still posing problems if you're Adam Blocker, but that single mistake might just have gifted a 33rd Lionheart IndyCar Series win to Adam Blocker.
Unbelievable for Philip Krause, because as Blocker makes the pit stall, I think even with the traffic, Blocker still comes out, because that is at least 3 or seconds at least. Krause has just cost himself. It's just a matter of exiting cleanly right now.
But look at this. Look at the train that's in front of Blocker. That is not ideal. O'Brien's going to get out of the way. That's the 37, I believe, of Bommersbach, who's also in the way. He's going to get out of the way as well. Where is Krause? You can't even see him. Blocker has not just got the lead. He's got clean air to take him to victory lane once more. 21 laps left to survive. That gap is over 5 full seconds.
What did I just say? That mistake cost possibly Krause the race win here, because he was in control of his own destiny. All he needed to do was have a clean out lap, and he likely cycles in front with the amount of traffic. Instead, you have that lockup into turn 6, where so many drivers we've seen in the past make mistakes there, going too hard on that entry, and in turn, that possibly cost Krause the race, because he has to go around the same traffic possibly. Coming up, let's take a look at some more trouble, this time with the curb.
That's Callisto, and I think there's a subsequent bit of damage that's about to happen here, because the last I saw of this car, it was missing a rear wing, and yeah, you can see just the balance was gone, and noses it into the wall. Now there's a couple more things that we do have to take a look at. We'll get a look at what happened to Krause in a few moments time, but the more dramatic news is that Adriano Pinheiro has had a moment. Now how much time has he lost? That will be the crucial factor. Here we go, let's take a look at it. Appears as though he's coming in towards the final corner, that hairpin. He's got some traffic in front of him. That's, I believe, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, and trying to get the power down. He just lights it up, and that might give Connor Harrington a nice old run into third spot.
At minimum, and that eliminates all the pressure, as Blocker just had to dodge another car that had an issue.
It's Chris
Fowler.
Fowler.
Was Chris Fowler. Chris Fowler, this time coming off turn 5, got loose.
It is all going on. No matter where you look out on track, you will find someone having some sort of an issue. Let's pick up then what happened to Krause very quickly. Just cold tires, trying to commit too early when the tires did not have the grip that he thought they would have. Look on board and look at the steering. That's going to be crucial. He brakes at the right time, but he turns in so early. He's offline on the entry, and that compound has to back it up, has to compromise even more, and that might just be the mistake that gets Adam Blocker back to HyperX victory lane, JP.
It just looked like, based on that viewpoint, Krause, the second he realized it isn't turning the same direction he prefers compared to the warmed-up tires, that he was in trouble. And for Philip Krause, that's a mistake you usually don't see from him, because we've seen him be able to be consistent in these situations, but this time, just the pressure it seemed maybe coming into play here. Keep in mind, as well when it came to the last incident we watched, when it came to this corner, it was the curbing. This time, Fowler took more curbing. Good job to avoid the wall this time.
Yeah, now you'll see there's, I think, Tony Showen. He spins it around, and here comes Blocker. Plenty of space. Not too much drama there. Now look, though, at a battle that's going on for, what's it? It's going to be now net 14th position, I think, give or take. Something like that. As the likes of Jason Brophy, Razmas, Jay Brandt all down onto pit road. So is the Brazilian that put it on pole position, Adriano Pinheiro.
And the tough thing for Pinheiro was, I think, at one point he looked to be in a very solid spot, was really showing good speed when it came to the blacks, keeping up with the reds even with some of the mistakes early on, but the thing is, he just couldn't make a pass, but Blocker you just seen put in a flyer of a 107.5.
And he's starting to burn through the push-to-passes. He knows that this is the time. So there is Pinheiro. Harrington is already cycled on through, so Harrington's looking secure to lock in third spot for the private label Team Hype. Remember, it's Phil Kraus, Connor Harrington, and Jason Brophy, the two in that main PLTH organization. Joshua Chin running by himself because he'll be on a slightly on and off schedule based on his work as well. And confirmation from the private label Team Hype, Kraus was on the black mark primary tires in that middle stint of the race. So if he hadn't made that mistake, it would have been wide open how this final stint was going to play out between Blocker and Kraus. Equal on strategy, how would the pace determine it all?
Well, I think right now it's pretty telling now that Blocker's got clean space. He's pulling away a few tenths per corner section right now. Blocker just is more comfortable in the space compared to that right now. Kraus needs to find a way to get himself back together here because he can still get some great points here if he keeps it clean for what could be a Team 2-3 right now. Pinheiro has indeed cycled a fourth after his sequence.
They would have wanted the victory, they would have wanted second spot as well, but they'll take second and third in those crucial team standings as we now look back again at Kite Bomersbach and Tyler Graf, who are working their way through the final corner, through the middle portion of the lap. Tyler Graf's in that 98 machine. Nice and tidy for him. Up front, the gap's now up to 8.3 seconds, so it really has reduced a gulf between those top two that, unless Blocker has a mistake, an uncharacteristic mistake, it should also be said, looks as though he will be able to hold on now, but never say never. We like to hype up the drama. Let's see if we can will an exciting finish into existence. Plenty of drivers still have push-to-passes left to use. Does include Bomersbach, who has 5 to defend with. We say this a lot, but it's not just push-to-pass, it's push-to-defend. Tyler Graf has just 1, so he's got to plan this out properly, JP. Coming to 15 to go, 1 push-to-pass really leaves you in a difficult spot.
I think part of the thing when it comes to Tyler Graf, keep in mind, is he got boxed in behind one of the drivers who's had some struggles today, Barrett Rolfe, including a drive-through at one point. Now he's boxed in behind another Riscari Autosport machine, and now we have another spin.
It's for Alexis Newsom again, I do believe. Yes, it was indeed. Caleb Bensi, by the way, is pulled into pit lane. That's now going to promote, Bradley Sexton onto pit lane, promotes Caleb Bensi, Isaac Morris up spots into 6th and 7th spot. Alexis Newsom has had to take the tow back to pit lane. That might be day done for her. Not been an easy day for many of the rookies. You think of what happened to Malechka, you think of now what's happened to Newsom, Pinheiro as well from pole position. I don't want to say that's a struggle that he's been having, but definitely not ideal by any means, JP.
Yeah. And I think groupings like this, too, keep in mind that you're seeing on screen. As Graf elects to use a push to pass again.
And now he's got to make it work.
Difficulty of it.
He's got to make it work. To the inside, he's got the black primaries on, and he'll slot his way through. He's got to now defend for all he's worth. Phil Kraus will come in and interrupt the party. That might help Graf break away very slightly, but that was crucial. Once you commit, you've got to make it. You've got to take full advantage of it. Sorry, JP, go back to the point you were trying to make. Oh, it's Graf's into the wall.
Well, there's a saying, too. You end up trying to push so hard to pass a certain colored car or a certain grouping of teams, and then once you get yourself there, you end up saying, let's run away, and you just make a mistake. That can happen where you just end up hyping yourself up, you end up hitting that wall, and now Graf has to find a way to let Kraus go possibly here, who is boxed in now. And Kraus has lost 2 seconds from this group.
At the end of the day, though, it doesn't matter. Kraus is not trying to force the issue either. He knows it's effectively done. He's just nursing that car back all the way into second spot, which is not the worst thing in the world by any means. He's going to get on the button to try and clear. Remember as well, bit of drama at the NTT IndyCar Series 2022 opener when Scott McLaughlin, leading the race, ran into Devlin DiFrancesco as well as Jimmy Johnson in those last 5 laps. Had plenty of drama, but Jimmy Johnson did hold on to the victory. Let's go ahead and pick up then what happened with Alexis Newsom, because I'm curious how her race has ended. Into the final couple of corners, loops it around. That's a lazy spin. Now doesn't take damage. Has she just gotten so frustrated that she's decided that I'm just going to retire the car, which I don't blame. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not feeling comfortable, oh no, never mind. She tries to spin it around. Maybe there's damage. And one thing that we should note, JP, is if you bring the car back to pit lane under its own steam, you might not always get the damage repaired, especially the steering damage.
Yeah.
Taking a tow is sometimes the only way to trigger that.
You know what? There was damage there because if we can go back to a couple corners before and find a way to look from the rear wing forward, you may notice something. I just noticed this too. Newsom's rear body was shaking about on the car, I mean specifically. Where the back end attached from where the halo is towards the rear of the car was flipping about. I think that was where the damage she's been feeling was, and it just wasn't detecting that, okay, this part of the car's about to fall off.
Don't think we can get a great look at that, but I'll take your word for it, trust me there. Still watching this battle, 13th on back now as Bomber's back. As Chris Fowler in the rearview mirrors, Bradley Sexton not far behind either. Barrett Rolfe has had to work his way onto pit road as well. Remember, 41 started, 10 are left on the lead lap, JP. You think back to 12 months ago, that is a dramatic swing. Remember, 6 finished on the lead lap, which shows you just how tough, just how difficult the mental focus can be at a track like this to make sure you don't end up in the wall.
And if you end up losing that said focus, this track usually makes you pay, as we said. You just need to be able to keep yourself laser focused, tune at everything around you, make sure you end up hitting every brake mark to your best ability. You end up missing a brake mark or having a brain fade, you be like Tony Schoen, who just rejoined letting cars go and drove into the side of Alexander Van de Sande. What was he doing?
That's teammate rivalries there if we've ever seen it before. We'll see if we can grab a replay there. Guyon has gotten in front of Houston. What a drive from Guyon. He was not happy with himself. Alexander Van de Sande was not happy with Guyon after the drama that was happening with lap traffic 2 weeks ago at the Homestead Miami Speedway. Van de Sande felt like he might have had the chance to close on Kraus to fight for the victory. This time, though, after that end-of-line penalty, Alex Guyon has gained more than 20 positions in this race so far.
Yeah, and remember, Guyon was a bit of a factor last time out, but for Guyon this time, kept it calm, been able to give a lot of space for those needing said space, but in turn just been able to pick drivers off one by one. Give a shout out though to Jason Brophy, who did not qualify tonight in the 88. Biggest mover overall at 21 positions gained from his qualifying spot. And he's been picking up as much compared to some others as 5 seconds on his entries.
Let's now turn the attention to that incident that JP brought to our focus. So Schauen's coming through. You can see Van de Sande's just coming, and there's never space, unfortunately, for Van de Sande to be able to keep that so tight. Now, who's got the worst of the damage? I think Van de Sande got the worst of the damage.
And Van de Sande, remembers, already had significant damage. This is the baffling thing for me. Tony Schauen, if you go back further, he was there because he was letting cars go, I believe. There was a whole train right behind him, tries to get rolling, comes up right in the midst of the next train. Just not the best spot to do that because, well, it's not a really spatial space to do it.
Spatial space, I like that. But to quote my my good friend, Lewis McLeod, that is suboptimal. Suboptimal, the best way to put it. As Tyler Graf, we turned our attention away from his battle, and unfortunately, he has found himself in pit lane once more. Now, what has happened to the 98? Where has it all gone wrong for a driver that was having a very, very impressive run? Let's not dawdle. Let's figure this one out. And it's again deja vu. Is it going to be too much curb? No, he loses it early. From there, it was only going in one direction, and that direction was into the wall.
And I think the building up of things for Graf tonight, as see him just trying to make his way to the corner. Again, hits the curb, immediately knows the second he hits that curb, immediately started turning it to the left in the middle of a right-hand corner, and Graf pays the price for it.
And now another car has had to take a tow. I believe it's Chris Lanini in the 92. See if we can pick up what's happened to him. They're dropping like flies. That's an understatement with 10 laps to go here. Blocker has a 10.5-second advantage. Here's a look at what happened to Chris Lanini.
I think it's with the left rear tire. Yep, just clipped it against there. That broke part of the body off as well. And Lanini realizes down the middle of the straightaway he can't keep it going.
He hits it on the tires, does he? Yeah, he's just a bit wide, and that sucks you in. It's so easy to do, and it's not just tire damage, wing damage from there, but I do believe he's also taking some suspension damage, and that's why that car is very much worse for wear. It's opened up in the top 5. Still looking at a potential fight between Caleb Bensi and Isaac Morris. There's Morris in the Alcantech NHR Esports car, just behind Caleb Bensi. Good run for both these drivers so far after qualifying on the fringes of the top 10. Worked their way forward, kept it clean. Sometimes that's all you need to have a good result here, JP.
Absolutely, and that's one of the critical things where when it comes to this track, as we've seen in the past, it's so easy to end up not finishing the race. And that's one of the critical things. When you want to contend for a championship at the team level, at the driver level, at the rookie level, you need to contend wherever you can. And at the tracks you may struggle at, you have to find a way to at least score solid points to be able to make up for that when you then in turn go to the major tracks and do well, for example. You can't just bank on, okay, I know I'm going to be bad at X, Y, Z, and double Z. You need to be able to find a way to score solid points at all those tracks in case you say, hey, I'm going to do great at track A, and then you finish in 33rd at track A.
8 to go this time by. Still 9 on the lead lap. I think at best we are, at worst, I guess you should put it, we'll end up with 7, given the delta that we have got out on track. There's the 26 of Bradley Sexton, who has just actually gone and passed Chris Fowler. A little bit different delta. Sexton's only been on track now for 7 laps on those tires, compares to 12 for Chris Fowler. Both are on those alternate red mark tire. Pinheiro's lost a little bit more time in the traffic as well. He's fallen now 4.5 back from Connor Harrington for a podium spot. And an update on the tumultuous nature of this race. 41 started, we mentioned that before, just 9 on the lead lap, but as it stands right now, I believe just 34 are out there and running. The most recent retirees include Tyler Groff, of course, that we saw, but also Mike Rigney had a moment in his 00 and has found himself stationary on the pit lane. Let's talk about Blocker here for a sec, because he is not just the driver to have the longest winning streak in Lionheart IndyCar Series history. That winning streak, 5 in a row, that was in 2021. But with 32 wins coming into today's race, he has got 12 more victories than the next most winning driver in Lionheart history. It's an incredible run, 32 so far, and likely to add to that tally once more. Yes, last time it didn't go great for him, but let's add that factor, JP, which was he wasn't racing from home. He was racing from James Grahula, former Lionheart competitor's rig, because he was in Texas for an NTT IndyCar Series test. Recovering a top 10 was good enough for Blocker. Remember, he's going to have to do that on a multitude of occasions this year. Knowing he's got that ability to adapt to an unusual and new circumstance to him is going to be vital in his hopes to make it another championship here in Lionheart IndyCar competition.
And several drivers, keep in mind, across the iRacing service at the highest levels have to do that. Mitchell Dion, for example, we've seen go between the Commanda House in the past, as well to his home state of California for some rounds for various pro-level races. One better example can think about is drivers like Garrett Lowe in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, who also races short track events, and in turn sometimes has to race from a hotel when he's racing, say, at the Summer Shootout in Charlotte, or if he's in Florida for that action during the early portions of the year. A lot of drivers have to be able to adjust to different environments and adaptations. And it's not an easy thing, because for some, it comes down to having time to sit down and get comfortable. For others, you give them a steering wheel, a set of pedals, a monitor, preferably up to 3 monitors, and get yourself hooked up and ready to go, and figure out a way to communicate with your group and your respective technical alliance. You can drive well. And for Adam Blocker, he showcased in most circumstances he can do that in the past, but it's going to be a true test. Can he do it when he is traveling constantly throughout this year is the big question.
And, you know, to kind of go back to your point about, you know, the World Championship level drivers having to deal with this. The World of Outlaws NOS Energy Drink Sprint Car World Championship that just wrapped up a couple of months ago when the Chili Bowl was happening in the month of January. A number of drivers went to that race and they all worked together to be able to race in that World Championship race on the Monday night. It's something that you have to be able to do. It's something we saw today in the VCO Esports Racing World Esports Racing League, that builds to the Esports Racing World Cup, where teams have 5 drivers that they can nominate, 3 different platforms, iRacing, rFactor 2, Assetto Corsa Competizione, and they have to, from those 5 drivers, put forward a lineup for each of the races that will get them the best result possible. Adaptability is an underrated skill in a modern world of motorsports where hyper-specialization is the name of the game, but you think back to IndyCar legends of the past that have gone to Formula One, that have gone to NASCAR, that have gone to Le Mans and been able to win, and that's forgetting the success they've had on the dirt tracks as well. Adaptability is often the best way to see the quality of the driver, and that's something we may see over the course of 2022. Benzi and Morris side by side for a moment, but Benzi holds on for now. Morris is on the button. 5 push-to-passes each left for these drivers with 4 laps to go. This is going to be a fun fight to the end of this race as they almost make contact.
Morris nearly hitting the back end right there, trying to go for the undercut there in the switchback. Keep in mind, Morris tried to do the same the previous corner and scraped the wall. So Morris knows this is his best chance to get a strong finish here in this car. He's got the pace. It's just a matter of finding the spot to get the pass done, and that's easier said than done with the amount of blocking coming into play now.
Pretty aggressive, the 2 of them. As into the fountain they will come. It's close here. It's not really close anywhere else inside of the top 10. Sexton and Bommersbach split by just over half a second. Luis Gonzalez Nunez and Alexander Van der Sant for 20th position, as Van der Sant looks to recover after his moment earlier in this race. Other than that, all eyes focused on this battle that we're watching right now, as I was just talking about Alexander Van der Sant and Luis Gonzalez Nunez. And Alexander Van der Sant's day somehow goes from bad to worse.
And I think you have to go all the way back to turn 8 for this one, and from what I can tell, Luis Gonzalez Nunez not happy. If we can take a look back, because Alexander Van der Sant, when he came under the power, ran over the back end of Nunez in his car.
No,
watch this on exit.
No, we're going to turn our attention to that in a couple of moments' time, because Adriano Pinheiro from 4th place out on track has had to tow it back to pit lane. What has happened to your pole sitter? Let's check it out immediately. In towards turn 1, it looks tidy for now. Remember, with 3 laps to go, he has slammed it into the wall, and Pinheiro is going to be devastated.
Pinheiro had been having such a strong run, his best run in the series so far. And I think the straight steering wheel says it all. The second he hit the wall, it looked like almost that just may have broke the wheel in of itself.
He will be heartbroken. He will be devastated, and I do not blame him for that. What a drive he was having. Maybe went a little bit wrong with the strategy, but ultimately you try something and it either works or it doesn't work. Pick apart this, JP. You were talking about what happened with these 2.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Nunez doesn't get the greatest run in. Van der Sant tries to pick up the power, actually gets in the back of him, breaks the wing of the 96, tempers start flaring as a bit of an early checkup with Nunez. Then tempers continue to flare all the way to the final corner for the hairpin. And at this point, Van de Sande, who has significant damage, just goes straight. And a couple drivers have to take evasive action as Van de Sande's day comes to an end here.
Yeah, he could have,
at least for that wing.
He could have turned that car, that's for sure. 2 laps to go. In fact, no, it's white flag now because Blocker is across the start-finish line to start the final 2 miles of this HyperX Grand Prix of Long Beach. What a race it was at the first half. It was that second cycle of pit stops that changed the game. Sexton and Marquez are swapped around further down the field, but what a drive from Blocker. Patient, and when the mistake presented itself, he was there to pounce.
Blocker has been consistently hitting his marks from the get-go all night long, it seems. But it just took that mistake with Kraus on that outlap to be able to get him this advantage, because Blocker had the great run through the pit lane the first time around. Nearly jumped ahead of Kraus when it came to the battle off the pit lane of itself before having to back out to the fountain. Now Blocker showcased the true skill that in true pace that he was trying to figure out to make the move for.
It's a century of starts now for Adam Blocker in the Lionheart IndyCar Series, and with his 100th start, he racks up win number 33. An incredible driver, an incredible streak. Blocker conquers the streets of Long Beach to win the HyperX Grand Prix of Long Beach. What a drive, what a day, and Philip Kraus, well, one mistake changed the game for him as he looked to try and go back-to-back to kick off 2022. Kraus will settle for second position. Private label Team Hype will still be celebrating though, as Connor Harrington will be across the line in the 44 machine to round out the podium. Unfortunately for them, Jason Brophy had a last lap incident, which means it won't be 3 of their cars inside of the top 15. A good day overall, a great day for Adam Blocker, and a wonderful day for the likes of Matt Taylor in that number 8 car, who's going to work his way through the final corner to make what is his second best finish in Lionheart career, in his Lionheart IndyCar career. 3rd place at Silverstone, 4th place now to add to that on the streets of Long Beach. Let's watch.
Dustin Wardlow, I think, just had an issue. Some of these drivers have the Dodger Juna, pardon you.
No, you're right. I saw the Candyman having his issues, but I was focused more on the day that was had. The Candyman was 4 laps down, has not lost too many positions as a result of that. Good hard fighting, that's what we love to see. And Adam Blocker will burn it down in HyperX victory lane.
Just an incredible run, to say the very least, tonight, Arjuna. Blocker was quick all throughout the evening. It just was the matter of taking advantage of mistakes. That was the critical thing. If you could keep it mistake-free or minimize them at least, you'd be the driver who would win at the end of the night.
Let's go ahead then and take a look at our SimRace 24/7 race results. 64 laps later, an incredibly clean start to this race, and then the chips began to fall. Adam Blocker, 100 career starts, 33 victories, 14 seconds clear of Phil Kraus in the private label Team Hype number 19. Connor Harrington makes it a day to celebrate for the PLTH crew with a 3rd place finish for him. Matt Taylor, great drive in that MadWorks Motorsports number 8 machine to get to 4th. Caleb Benzie will be thrilled, holding off the charge of Isaac Morris. He nets his first top 5 in his Lionheart IndyCar Series career. Isaac Morris, last car on the lead, lap 6, which matches what we had 12 months ago. Mike Razmas, the first car 1 lap down, while it's a Synergy Motorsports party 8th through 10th. James Brandt leading Brian Beard and Adam Fraser across the line. Kite Bomber's back, able to hold off the challenge from Bradley Sexton to the line with Andrew Marquez, Chris Fowler, Alex Guyon, and Matt Houston through the top 16. Adriano Pinheiro will be gutted. A mistake with 3 laps to go drops him down to 17th spot. The man put it on pole, but do not count him out. He has shown already he's got the speed no matter where we go racing in this Lionheart IndyCar Series. Jason Brophy 18th, George Sandman 19th in his first appearance in 2022. Michael O'Brien brings the 45 car across the line to round out the top 20. Luis Gonzalez Nunez 21st, with Alexander Van der Sande's recovery drive only netting him a 22nd. Lionel Caliso at pace in the early stages. He's down in 23rd with Barrett Rolfe, the only driver with a drive-through penalty in today's race. AJ Musselman 25th, Andrew Kinsella, who got together with Barrett Rolfe, rolls across the line 26th. Robert Malechka rounds out a disappointing day for Powerslide with a 27th for him. Tyler Groff, Dustin Wardlow, Joshua Chin, the top 30, with Joe Branch, Alexis Newsom, Tony Shaw, and Chris Lanini, Ron Hacker, all finishers of this race. Mike Rigney, the first non-finisher, down in 36th position. To the graveyard, we find Mitchell Riggs, Paul Jenkins, Stefan Larkamp, Matthias Kraus, as well as Brian Carey and Aaron Morgan. Big field, big drama, big chaos, but so much fun. That leads us nicely into our HyperX post-race show, because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloudline of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. Let's head straight then down into HyperX victory lane, where for the 33rd time in his Lionheart IndyCar career, Adam Blocker is celebrating. Adam, before we get to the victory, let's talk about the opening 2 stints of the race, where you and Phil Kraus pushed each other tooth and nail. I mean, it didn't look as though you were ever going to really be able to do it on track. It looks like it was going to have to happen in the strategy. In that first stint, you got the overcut working. Was that what you expected?
Yeah, so first at the beginning of the race, when I congratulate Adriano on the pole, that was a really good lap. But yeah, Kraus and I were pretty aggressive to get past him pretty quickly, because I think we had a little bit better race pace. Yeah, so we really just kind of sent it on him. And then, yeah, from there, I mean, Phil and I think in the first stint were pretty evenly matched. There were some spots where I was faster, but it was only by maybe a tenth. And here you got to have such a big pace advantage or a mistake to pass. And that first stint, we knew it was going to be tough, but like the higher track temps at the beginning of the race on reds, I mean, we were just nursing the tires the whole stint. And there was a couple times I was getting held up, so I was just saving fuel. And you know, that helped me get the overcut. Maybe I left some strategy options open for later in the race. And yeah, I really probably should have gotten him on the overcut. I kind of was lazy getting out of my box, and yeah, that could have helped me clear him into the fountain. But yeah, as it was, I had to kind of pressure him for another stint and keep with him on the blacks. So
once the mistake happened, we saw you start to burn the push-to-passes. Were you ever concerned at that point, or were you just trying to save that car? If you were trying to save that car, you weren't really doing a great job of it, given how fast you were really going.
yeah, I mean, I didn't want to slow down too much, because the thing is, at a track like this, once you slow down, the car feels different and you lose confidence. So I kept pushing fairly hard, not 10 tenths, but not as hard as I was with Phil. But you know, I pushed decently hard and kept a good momentum. I knew the reds in the last stint with the cool track would be decent, and I had a good enough gap to fill where I wasn't really worried about anything. So I was just kind of pushing, and whenever I came across a lap car, I was careful, and yeah, just kind of managing the race.
Good way to get back into victory lane after your top 5 streak came to an end a couple of weeks ago. A week from now, we'll head to Kentucky. What are you expecting from that race?
It depends on which version of the Kentucky you run and what setup Andrew comes up with. I think it'll be harder to pass than Homestead, but it can put on a good race, and probably not my best track, but yeah, I'll definitely give it a go, and happy to get the win here today. That really needed that for my season. And yeah, just want to thank everybody at Powerslide for the effort, and unfortunately we didn't really get more cars up there, but yeah, that's how it goes sometimes. Yeah, I also just want to thank all the league admins for putting on the league, and all the lap cars as well. They really did a good job getting out of the way and really just kind of being predictable. So yeah, big thanks to them as well.
Congratulations, Adam, on the victory here today. It was Blocker versus Kraus, though. Not something we're unused to seeing, but it was a mistake from Kraus that cost him the chance of victory there. Phil, talk to us what happened there. Cold tires on the outlap on the final stint of the race.
Yeah, just an unforced error. Touched the brakes and it just immediately locked up, and I knew I was missing the corner, so just minimized my losses, made sure I didn't clobber the wall, lose a front wing, and make bad go to worse. But it kept doing it through the rest of the final run, so I don't know if I was just braking different and losing focus or what was going on. But yeah, it was a fun race with Adam the whole way through. He was pushing me around, it felt like, because I think every time I looked it was like 4 tenths or something like that. But really fun, and definitely really tense the whole way through.
What was it like with this setup? We heard some notes from the drivers that it was bouncy, it was pitchy, and not always that compliant, but you seem to have a pretty good wrangle and grasp on the car today.
Yeah, it wasn't the most comfortable setup I've ever driven, especially at a track like Long Beach. You really want to be able to trust the car at a track like this, and I didn't really feel like I could. And I was definitely having to back it down a little bit throughout the race. In quali, I think I hooked up probably my best lap this week, and it was only enough for second. I don't know what happened with Adriano. I know he started on the primaries, but he was pretty far back at the end. I think he got in a crash in the final few laps, but I'm not sure.
He did.
But yeah, the car was definitely interesting to drive. I'll leave it at that.
I mean, good start to the season overall. Yes, you didn't get the victory, but a first, a second, as you try and stop one of the most successful drivers in IndyCar iRacing competition. Good way, and I'll remind you as well, the last time we saw something like this where you and Blocker and you were trying to get the championship away from him was the Indy Elite Series. How did that turn out? Pretty well for you.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if I'll be able to replicate here, obviously. Blocker's won how many titles in a row? Is it 4? So, be nice to see someone new win the championship, but I don't even know if it'll be me. It's so early in the season, anybody's game.
Still 20 races to go. Nice to hear you focus on what lies ahead. Congratulations, Phil. We'll see you next week from Kentucky.
Yep, cheers, Arjuna. You guys have a good night.
That was Phil Kraus, who drove an excellent race. Unfortunately, just at the end, a mistake cost him dearly. Final step of the podium was Connor Harrington. He's standing by with Justin Prince.
Connor, for you tonight, it was the matter of holding on to that third spot because you had two different challengers try and fight behind you. Both in the end had some attrition issues in turn. Talk us through your night as you had a lot of pressure behind you in that private label team hype machine.
Yeah, really proud tonight to get our private label team hype machine home in third place. Really glad to finish all the laps, and pretty happy with the defense that I made there on Adriano and Alex. I think they definitely had the pace over me, but track position is just so important, and especially when you're on the when you're on the slower tire in that middle stint. You got to defend there for everything that you got to make the strategy work. So, yeah, happy with P3 tonight. Probably didn't have the pace to compete with the top two, but kept all 4 corners on it, and good points for us.
And that's also critical, as we talked about, when it comes to the championship battling. Curious on this, though, when it comes to the feeling of this respective track tonight. Talk us through how it felt from your perspective in terms of trying to handle Long Beach, because Phil mentioned how, for him, he was wondering about his brake marks for this final run of the race. What was the feeling like for you to try and handle the streets of Long Beach?
After about 5 laps, I felt like somebody had put a bunch of butter down on the racetrack. I was not very gripped up at all, other than for 1 lap pace. It's kind of just the theme, it feels like, for me with this new tire. So, I don't know. You gotta look at the data, gotta look at how we're driving the car compared to Phil, because obviously he's got some pretty good pace. But I felt like I was just sliding the entire time, and I just couldn't push the way I would want to. Which is kind of a bummer, but that's how it goes sometimes when you're fixed setup racing.
Well, congratulations on the podium run tonight, Connor. We'll see how you do next time out.
Yep, thanks, guys.
That's Connor Harrington rounding up the top 3 tonight, Arjuna.
Good race overall for the private label team hype, except for Jason Brophy's little mistake at the end of the race. Quick look at the schedule, quick look at what lies ahead of us. A week from now, we are back, same time, same place. Here live on RaceSpotTV, 10:05 p.m. Eastern, 7:05 p.m. Pacific. We go to Kentucky. Blocker was questioning which version of Kentucky we're going to. From what I remember, we're going to the new version of Kentucky. Be interesting to see what that holds in store for us.
Well, it was mentioned, should correct you there a bit there, that Andrew discussed there were 2 legacy tracks Lionheart competition normally goes to. Texas and Kentucky. And remember when it came to the Kentucky race last year, in several situations, fuel saving was critical. The Speedway Series in particular was a fuel mileage race where only one driver was able to stretch it 45 laps per stint. Alexander Van de Sent. If it goes green like that again for IndyCar competition, I want to be shocked, Arjuna, to see drivers trying to extend the fuel mileage, knowing what he could do and try and replicate that. It's not an easy task, though, because it came down to fumes in speedway action.
7 days from now, we will find out what's going to happen. Can't wait to see it. Hopefully, you'll be along for the ride. Before we say goodbye, we'd like to thank those that make all of this possible, starting with the title sponsor of the Lionheart IndyCar Series. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can accurately feel what it's like to drive a race car. Butt kicker haptic hardware and software are easy to install and let you feel every bump in the track, slip of your tire, and engine redline. The tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com.
Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit www.nextlevelracing.com.
Moser Racing is revolutionizing sim racing with the development of industry-leading hardware and software products like their R9 direct drive steering wheel and the GS steering wheel, featuring zero-delay wireless technology and made from high-end materials. Moser Racing delivers the precision you need to reach victory lane.
And lastly, I'd like to thank Gomez Sim Industries for their respective support when it comes to Lionheart competition and their respective backing, where Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, precision built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com.
It's not just them, but so many more that make this all happen. To learn more about the partners of the Lionheart Racing Series, head to lionheartracingseries.com, where you can find up-to-date information on all three competitions the Lionheart sanctioning body puts on. But for now, we are done from the streets of Long Beach. 2 down, 20 to go. It's a long road on the path to a championship here in the Lionheart IndyCar Series, but you can find every minute live and uninterrupted here on RaceSpotTV. For now, though, we bid you goodbye. We'll see you in a week's time from Kentucky. Don't miss what is bound to be an exciting race and our first 1.5 miler with some slightly higher banking than what we saw at the Homestead Miami Speedway. We'd like to thank Dougie Beard for providing our track cameras for today, Tyler Maxon providing our car cameras, Timing 71 powering our timing, while for our graphics, ATVO has been putting in the hard work for years and years to make these broadcasts look as good as they can. For now, though, we bid you adieu, where alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, I've been delighted to be joined by the one, the only, Justin Prince. What a race here at Long Beach. Strategy played itself out, and ultimately Adam Blocker showed why he is the king of Lionheart. We'll see you next time here on RaceSpotTV. For now, congratulations to Adam Blocker. 100 starts, 33 wins in the Lionheart IndyCar Series.